thank you all so much for joining me on the webcast today. As always, we have way too much to cover in a very limited time today, but I assure you everything's right, so just hold tight. In the off chance we run a few minutes past the top of the hour and you have to drop off the call at that time, you can always catch the last few minutes on the recording. So move ahead here. Okay, so here we go. The new features in Revit 2023 fall under these 6 key themes. We've got design productivity, simulation and analysis, interoperability, cloud and data, design optimization, and documentation efficiency. Here is a giant list of features for design productivity. And as you can see, this is a super long list. I didn't double check, but pretty sure we have a slide for all of these. So I'll give you a second just to kind of look at that. And then we'll have these. But before that, here's some additional features for simulation and analysis, as well as cloud and data, interoperability, and design optimization. And then I'll just give you a few seconds to see if anything jumps off the page here for you. And we've got slides for these line items as well. Last but not least, I think we've got one more topic here. And there's many, many cool new features for documentation efficiency. So again, you can take a quick look at these. All right. So a whole bunch of stuff to cover today. So let's start with the design productivity and enhancements. So the measure tool in Revit is used to quickly check distances in Revit between model elements or other references in your projects. In previous releases, the measure between two references tool was enabled for 2D views only. Revit 23 adds support for both orthographic and perspective 3D views. You can now snap to any position in 3D without work plane restrictions. In a new hotkey, the control key, you can lock the measurements so that it remains perpendicular to the start face in 3D views. This might be useful when measuring the distance between two walls. I've had a chance to play around with this. This one's pretty nice. You can also measure the shortest distance to a target plane or a line by activating the perpendicular snap through the contextual menu, or using the keyboard shortcut SP to snap perpendicular. You might use this to measure the vertical height between 2 points that are not located directly above each other. I kind of find that happening all the time. So pretty convenient. All right. So with this one, a work plane associates your model geometry to a reference surface. Now in Revit 23, you can set your active work plane instantly using the PK shortcut. Now, 1 second here. Okay, so alternatively, you can select the pick a plane option in 2 clicks via the set work plane drop-down menu. You can now smoothly switch which work planes during modeling operations without opening the work plane dialog. So that's just a way to switch work planes a little faster than before. All right. Revit now remembers the last work plane used in the project. This means that when you load and place a work plane based family, Revit will now activate the last used work plane as the default placement option. This selection will be retained until you reset it. Um, Now, when duplicating a material, you can choose to duplicate the assets or use shared assets. There are two new options available in the contextual menu. Number one, you can duplicate material and assets. When you select this option, then both the material and the assets from the source material are duplicated, and the newly created material and source material have independent assets. Changes to the assets of one material will not affect the other material. And then the other option is duplicate using shared assets. This time when a material is duplicated, the new material and the source material share common assets. That's more like the legacy approach here. So changes to the asset affect both the new material and the source material. And just a little editorial here. I love this because every once in a while I have duplicated a material and forgotten to duplicate the asset. And what happened? Well, if you change the asset properties, it could affect multiple materials. And all of a sudden, your entire model could be, I don't know, painted in vermilion. So it is really great to have the option to duplicate the asset right along with the material. All right. Let's see, moving right along here. Revit 23 enables you to share decals and material textures across geographically distributed teams using Autodesk Docs or custom external servers. In previous versions of Revit, users rendering in BIM Collaborate Pro or BIM 360 projects would encounter missing render appearance warnings because workstations outside the network could not read the localized path of custom texture files. In Revit 2023, you can map your custom texture images to an Autodesk Docs folder path, allowing rendering assets to display consistently on every user's workstation. Use the Autodesk desktop connector to exchange and explore these assets. And this is nice too. Developers can access this feature in the Revit API to build their own custom server connections. This will allow you to collaborate more efficiently and create stunning visualizations across distributed teams using the decals and materials. Now, when selecting a view reference, you can search the list for a specific view. Searching is now enabled in the view reference drop-down list when placing a view reference or referencing another view. And to clarify, this was already available in the similar view reference dropdown, but now has been added to the view reference tool, which adds a text reference to a view. And just so you know what we're talking about, it's the one with the green box around it on this slide right here. Okay. Additional cuttable categories. This is great. So when creating section views, Revit, objects are generally cut automatically when the section plane passes through the solid geometry. However, a few Revit categories have not been cuttable in previous releases. These include furniture system, casework, specialty equipment, and plumbing fixtures. In Revit 23, cutting has been enabled for these categories. So you'll simply select an object belonging to one of these categories, click the Edit Family button, and ensure the Enable Cutting and Views parameter is checked in the Properties palette. You'll save the modified family and exit the family editor to return to your project. Now, when moving a section view line, you will see that the family is cut automatically. This enhancement to Revit 2023 gives users better control over the display of their families and views. And personally, I love this because non-cuttable families were a huge source of confusion for people with respect to view range settings. So I'm a big fan of this one. I think it's great. Okay. In Revit 23, you can rotate couplers with respect to the bar end for precise modeling with clash avoidance. And the coupler geometry is always aligned to the bar end. When rotating the coupler, this is the default position. For freeform rebar, the default position of the coupler is parallel to the host surface. So you can see some examples on this slide here. To create complex geometry and display it in a realistic way in 2D views, you can edit the coupler family and uncheck the Align to View option. This new feature helps structural engineers and detailers create highly detailed reinforcement models and documentation. You can now change the structural usage value to non-bearing to create structural walls that define and divide spaces and support no vertical load except their own weight. You can export non-bearing structural walls to IFC for accurate coordination of reinforced concrete partition walls. And this feature offers you better coordination with contractors and fabricators, giving accurate quantity takeoffs. And the American steel section shapes has been updated. The steel shape tables according to the 15th edition of the AISC have been added. Now you can use the latest steel profiles to create your steel structures. And in case we have anyone who does work across the pond, the Rebar shape library for UK has been updated as well to the latest standard. So now you can use the latest shape codes to reinforce your concrete structures. All right. Revit 2023 introduces adaptive propagation features for rebar to increase your productivity in detailing concrete structures. When you're working on a design that has similar concrete elements, you can quickly and accurately copy shape-driven rebar from one concrete host to another. Concrete host elements need not be identical for the newly created bars to match their new host. That's the power of adaptive propagation. To use this feature, simply select a concrete element that hosts rebar and click the Propagate Rebar command. Next, choose the alignment method by host or by face. The rebars are aligned based on the original destination faces. A destination face can be selected from the same host or from another element in any Revit category that can host rebar. Moreover, you can copy individual bars by making a rebar selection. Simply select one or more rebars in a host and propagate them aligned to a face in the same host or in a similar concrete element. You can also switch between alignment modes when you have already selected a specific face for a host, making it really easy for you to control the placement of newly created rebars. Now, when modeling complex structures such as a civil infrastructure or curved buildings, you might use free-form rebars instead of shape-driven rebars. Free-form rebars may be placed in virtually any concrete host. The new adaptive propagation features work for free-form rebars too. Freeform rebar can be propagated in a similar fashion to the shape-driven, but the freeform bars can be aligned to a destination host or face. So lots of flexibility here. All right, keeping on with the structural improvements here, and then kind of mix in some other stuff. The Revit 23 adds library-based steel connection design automation features. You can both model your design intent faster and embed structural engineering and fabrication rules to reduce iterations. Sample rules are provided for placing steel connections based on predefined ranges of applicability. These are found in the steel connection automation player. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to play around with that, but simply search for by ranges to filter out those that make use of the ranges that are applicable. An important fact to remember is that all structural members can leverage information stored inside analytical elements. So you may use the member end forces dialog to specify internal forces and moments for steel connections. Your model can also use structural analysis results imported into Revit from Robot Structural Analysis, Professional, or third-party tools. Rules for each type of steel connection are used to place them based on relevant criteria such as profile sizes, steel grades, and capable internal forces. These rules work in tandem with predefined libraries of connections. These are stored inside Revit files containing the connection types, desired geometry parameters, and associated ranges of applicability to ensure connections are selected appropriately. And then Revit 23 includes sample steel connection libraries to support certain regional standards, and the connection libraries are customizable. So you can adjust and extend them to meet any local or regional requirements. Yeah, got one more rebar here for you. So the performance of Rebar Display in the cloud viewer has been improved, which is pretty cool. You can now easily publish and open 3D rebar views using Autodesk Docs or Autodesk Construction Cloud Viewer to coordinate, inspect, and even share 3D rebar details or views in the model. This will improve your productivity when you work on cloud hosted projects containing Rebar. All right, here we go. This one's pretty fun too. So in response to a popular topic on the Revit Ideas page, Revit 2023 introduces new elevation parameter improvements for MEP segment tags. So elevation base options for tagging the upper end, lower end, and spot elevations of slope components now include top of insulation, top, center line, bottom, and bottom of insulation. Upper and lower elevations also include obvert and invert tagging options. So these improvements to elevation parameters will help you document and schedule for installation on sloped MEP segments. Pretty nice. And another response to a popular Revit Ideas topic, Revit 23 introduces new elevation base options for MEP segment tags. MEP segment tags offer new parameters for elevation base constraints in the properties palette. Constraints can be set relative to the component or driven by the project base point or survey point. MEP segment tags for design and fabrication will adjust automatically based on your selection. So these improvements to the elevation base tagging will really help you design and document, especially sloped MEP segments, a little more efficiently. All right. Let's see. And then new in Revit 23 are flip controls for fabrication parts. Flip controls make fabrication parts more efficient and are now consistent with the design parts. Subtle improvement, but very, very useful. All right. So new in Revit 23 are elevation controls for fabrication parts. Elevation controls for straight segment fabrication parts now use interactive in-canvas elevation markers. These are editable to control elevations on fabrication parts. Changing the elevation will move the entire run, unlike design elements, which would apply a slope to the run. So again, these improvements to elevation controls on fabrication parts will help you detail more efficiently moving forward in Revit. All right. This is nice too. Revit 23 has new MEP categories for plumbing equipment and mechanical control devices with corresponding family parameters. Button tools have been added to the plumbing ribbon and mechanical ribbon. Existing built-in content libraries have been updated with corresponding content. This will lead to better management for different disciplines within MEP workflows. This one's a nice time saver too. So Revit 23 enables you to rehost MEP connectors in the family editor. The new tools include pick new host and placement for face and work plane. When you rehost MEP connectors, the information is retained for the new placement. Relocating the MEP connectors will change or disconnect the location of connectors. But this improvement should really save a lot of time and rework when modifying your MEP components in the family editor. pretty nice upgrade here. Users have requested to save a step and no longer select activate dimensions for shared nested families. Revit 2023 removes the extra step of clicking on activate dimensions from the options bar to view temporary dimensions of shared nested families. Subtle update, but I always appreciate the elimination of an extra mouse click. Pretty good stuff here. Right. Revit 23 enhances the model performance by skipping the regeneration and calculation of redundant rooms. This change improves the processing of linked files, operations anywhere between 15 and 20% for models with a large number of room objects. The enhancement will be noticeable in models with the area and volume computations enabled. So yeah, if you like to set it so you can view volume computations, this will be a nice improvement here. A lot of performance enhancements coming up here. This is one of them. So users have requested to suppress on-screen controls and pins to have a better display performance experience. In Revit 2023, in-canvas displays now have tools for controls and are removed by default to reduce clutter and improve performance with large selections. So now, with many elements selected, the display is improved by reducing the in-canvas controls and providing tools to display previous behaviors. That would be the legacy option. This release improves performance considerably with controls on and a more enhanced performance experience with in-canvas controls off. The activate dimensions has been removed from the options bar. So now when multi-select is activated, so when you select a whole bunch of stuff, there's a control panel on the multi-select ribbon to activate controls and dimensions. The activate tool enables or disables the visibility of pins, constraints, and temporary dimensions. The Collaborate tab has a setting in the Manage Collaboration dropdown to toggle on or off the Show Work Sharing, Make Editable controls for legacy behavior to be shown in Canvas. So this new user requested performance improvement will significantly boost productivity across your Revit projects. Again, here's a whole bunch more performance upgrades. So Revit 23 adds several enhancements here just to specifically or significantly improve overall view performance. As far as user interface optimization, UI components were optimized to reduce unnecessary background graphics regeneration during navigation. These are things that the user probably had no idea was going on. So for example, the steering wheel rewind tool was generating screenshots at all times, not just while the tool was in use. And the UI of the navigation bar was redrawing the entire view many extra times. These optimizations have demonstrated an average improvement of 35% in navigation performance with Revit 23 across, I think they said 100 test cases. View performance has been improved in 3D views with selected families containing complex imports. I don't recommend using content with uh, imported geometry, but sometimes you can't avoid it. But users reported that pinned and unpinned elements with 3D DWG imports behaved significantly differently in testing with moderately complex geometry. So they think Revit provides at least 3 times more responsive view navigating when we've got 3D DWG geometry. As far as raster images, users reported that raster images would perform poorly and display inaccurately after rotation or the addition of transparency. For the most actions and views containing imported or linked raster images with rotation, Revit 23 seems to be at least 3 times better than previous releases. And then as far as MEP elements, users reported that Revit views displaying large numbers of MEP elements needed to be optimized. And it looks like they were able to improve views by at least 25% in easily 40 tested use cases. Another one that was reported was with respect to view filters. Now, this wouldn't have affected everybody. This was just people who had over 300 view filters or more in the project, which I guess is pretty rare. But if you use them, I guess you use them. And it looks like they were able to improve that. So they've noticed over a 400 times improvement with Revit 23 with respect to large projects with a large amount of view filters. So some of the things that would happen, just dragging text notes or dragging tags or changing a dimension, you might get that little spinning wheel. They think that that was due to view filters, and they've been able to significantly alleviate that issue. Another one that was reported was with hidden edges, and users reported that Revit performance suffered when many hidden edges are displayed, but they've shown that Revit 23 provides an average performance improvement of about 35% in opening and navigating views with hidden edges. And then there's some other ones along here. They improved performance for shape edited slabs. We've got one for had delays when linking large DWG files. That's been improved as well. In one case, I think they had one that took normally 2 hours to load. They got it down to like 10 seconds. Let me see if I got another one here. Copying large numbers of elements would be painfully slow, but that's been improved by at least 6-fold. And another one, when the type selector contains many items, that would have negative impacts on performance, and they've significantly improved that as well. So a lot of performance improvements went into this release. Okay, so that wraps up our design and productivity section. Now let's take a look at some simulation and analysis. The first one is quite a big change from previous releases, as the analytical model is now completely autonomous. The biggest difference you will notice is that you no longer get the analytical model elements modeled at the same time as physical elements. You can choose to initiate structural analysis workflows from Revit with or without any physical context. And I think this is pretty nice. For example, when starting a project from scratch, you can focus exclusively on analytical modeling, just like you would in a traditional analysis software. In Revit, analytical elements are fully parametric and are associated with grids and levels, enabling you to control element positioning using these datums. And we have some further information on the next slide here. So the development of a structural analytical model is an essential step in a structural engineer's BIM process. This model is often used in collaborative workflows across engineering teams. For many years, Autodesk Revit has offered features for structural analytical modeling. However, structural engineers are looking for more flexibility and control over their analytical modeling process, particularly for complex structures, as this will enable fully bidirectional workflows between Revit and analysis software. To that end, Revit 23 introduces a completely new approach to structural analytical modeling. As before, you can leverage existing physical geometry in 2D and 3D views as context for the analytical model. The analytical model remains associated to the physical geometry, but is now independent, providing you with the benefits of speed and accuracy in model creation while protecting the analytical model from unexpected changes. When modeling analytical elements, you can now assign their structural role, type, profile, shape, define their cross-section, rotation, and specify how these elements should be analyzed. To keep track of the relationships between physical and analytical model elements, you can easily associate them to each other. Once this is done, associated elements are highlighted upon selection. So this new approach to structural analytical modeling offers many benefits to structural engineers. They can more easily create representations for any type of structure, buildings, bridges, frames, pavilions, stairs, you name it. They can create consistent analytical models that align with their preferred engineering approach. They can enable structural analysis jobs from Revit models, and they can even create multiple analytical models for single physical representation and consider various analysis approaches simultaneously. Furthermore, Revit 23 also introduces structural analytical model automation. This tool enables you to generate a structural analytical model automatically from selected physical geometry, and it offers many options for customization. This tool also ensures that the automatically created model remains consistent and connected, eliminating the need for tedious corrections. You can designate a first, second, and third priority element hierarchy. This is useful, for example, when prioritizing column locations over beam locations. First priority elements are the master elements, meaning that second and third priority elements will snap to them. Likewise, third priority elements will snap to first and second priority elements. So some nice improvements there. All right, so now let's switch back to some electrical topics here. So Revit 23 introduces new features for electrical analysis. Electrical engineers and designers working in Revit can now leverage an architect's PDF, DWG, or Revit geometry to perform preliminary load calculations earlier in the design process, even prior to modeling electrical equipment. Revit's electrical analysis tools enable you to define boundary areas for area-based loads and equipment loads. These features help you capture the main loads, equipment, and distribution system requirements for your BIM projects in Revit. You can select an area-based load and specify the electrical analytical load. You can then estimate building loads throughout the distribution system without placing any physical Revit electrical families in the project. So you're kind of enabling a conceptual approach to electrical analysis and planning within Revit. Let's see what else we got here. You can define equipment loads for your conceptual distribution systems using this new analytical power distribution feature. That'll be found in the systems browser. And you can associate, or once you associate equipment loads with your analytical components, you can connect them to create an analytical electrical distribution system. And of course, you can schedule these, make a nice list, group, and sum the conceptual loads for both area-based loads and equipment loads. So nice addition here. Okay, so a Revit solar study helps you visualize the impact of natural light and shadows in your project. Revit 23 introduces a new set of contextual tools to help you preview and control solar studies. You can use the new animation controls on the preview and play panel to intuitively explore the performance of your project under a solar study. You can update your lighting parameters with new speed and sunlight intensity. And you can kind of switch between solar studies, still image, single day, multi-day lighting. And you can explore your project scene under different sun setting configurations and quickly update them to the specific time of the study. All right, so with that, let's now take a look at interoperability. Revit 23 and Format Pro 23 introduce expanded features for interoperability. This will make it easier to iterate early stage designs. You can now link Format AXM files directly in Revit. Changes to the format file are reflected in Revit when the link is reloaded, just like a CAD or Revit link. Now you can also, while working in Revit, you can now edit a linked format file in just 2 clicks. Select the format link in your Revit project, then click on the new Edit and Format button on the Modify tab, and it will open the linked model in a format session. Then building on the format enhancements, Revit 23 and Format Pro 23 introduce expanded features for interoperability, making it easier on early stage designs as well. So there's the 3D sketch feature, first introduced in Revit 22. This enables you to launch a format session from Revit, translate Revit elements as context geometry into format, and any new format design studies back to Revit using the Send to Revit command. Then there is a new Send to Revit preview mode in Format Pro, where you can enable the preview mode setting in Format and select those layers that will transfer to Revit. And then a blue frame at the view boundaries will highlight the geometry to be sent. And then once you've verified your selections, use the Send to Revit command to update the linked model in Revit, or save the file, and it will reload it in the Revit link. Revit 23 offers improvements to CAD file support. You can now link additional CAD file types, AXM, OBJ, and STL, into your Revit projects. All supported CAD file types can now be placed on levels or named horizontal reference planes as they are imported. And then a new instance parameter allows cutting of 3D elements in CAD files, which I thought was pretty nice. Revit provides fully certified IFC imports and exports based on building smart IFC data exchange standards. Revit 23 introduces new features for mapping standard IFC attributes. So nice little improvement there. Revit 23 provides, okay, Revit 23 provides new capabilities for managing the display of meshes. So instead of seeing a bunch of triangles, you can now have something that looks a little more smooth. You have the ability to change the color, which is pretty nice. And then direct shape is a Revit element that stores externally created geometry shapes of SAT, OBJ, Rhino, 3DM, and STL files. So there were some improvements here. You can use it to interpret closed solids or meshes where there's not information available to create a real Revit element. They've made it easier to define the placement with auto origin to internal origin or manual. You can also select a level or a named reference plan. All right, and then let's take a look at cloud and data improvements here. So the ability to share relevant data with multiple stakeholders across multiple applications is one of the most significant challenges faced by our industry, and Autodesk has developed the data exchanges to help solve these challenges. The data exchange is a neutral, secure subset of model data that can be shared with many downstream apps. So this will open up the door for a lot of automation workflows. I could probably do a whole webcast on a lot of these slides on their own. Let's just keep moving ahead here. There's also Autodesk MEP Fabrication Data Manager Tech Preview is now available for Revit users. After you download and install the MEP Fabrication Data Manager Sync Tech Preview, you can upload your fabrication configurations to the cloud. This will unlock great new collaboration workflows. And Parameters Service is a technology preview that allows you to manage your parameters library using the Autodesk Construction Cloud. So this one's pretty cool too. Using the Parameters Service, you can search for parameters and pull them in bulk into your Revit model. So all parameters are integrated directly with the Autodesk Construction Cloud. Parameters can be created as normal, but now could be stored in the cloud. And then there is some cloud model updates. You can now force workset relinquishing on cloud models from the Revit home screen. Cloud models for Revit is a capability that allows users to store and access non-work shared Revit models on the Autodesk Construction Cloud or BIM 360. Now in Revit 23, when you decide to save your project to the cloud, the last used account is remembered and displayed in the Save as Cloud Model dialog box. And this is a big one. In previous releases of Revit, rolling back a cloud model to a previous version was irreversible. But now, after you roll back, you don't lose the ability to roll forward. So that's a nice little feature as well. Right, so now let's take a look. We're moving right along here. We got one slide here for design optimization. So Revit 23 enhances the user experience for both generative design and Dynamo Player. Enjoy added flexibility with new input types. Nothing crazy here, but just some nice stuff. With generative design, you can now enter number inputs. You can also use a slider with number entry or type the desired number in the entry box. Some changes to the file path were added. and you can use text inputs and true-false Boolean toggles. Let me look here and see if there's anything else. Yeah, let's move right along here. And we have a whole bunch of features here for documentation efficiency. Everyone on the call is going to find these probably the bulk of the best improvements here. So I kind of saved the best for last. We're going to run through these now. All right, so Revit 23 introduces new enhancements to control the display of shape-edited floors. When you modify a flat floor with shape editing tools, you can add points or split lines to divide the surface into subregions that slope independently. In Revit 23, the floor category includes new folding lines and split lines subcategories. So this is going to allow you to control the visibility of these sloping subregion boundaries. You can convert folding lines into split lines with the new Convert Lines button. And if you need to change it back, you would just delete the line and it would go away. Key schedules provide a way to quickly add information to rooms and areas by adding the instance values from a key to all the rooms. In previous versions of Revit, the room and areas parameter values cleared empty when a key was set to none. In 23, if a key is unassigned from an element, the last values assigned are maintained. It's a little update there. This is pretty cool. A good schedule improvement here. You can now do conditional formatting to visually identify parameters and schedules that meet or do not meet design standards. Revit 23 adds conditional formatting for family, type, and family and you can easily select between the fields you would like to format. Each of these 3 new fields can be configured independently to help you differentiate between them. So yeah, in this slide, you can kind of see how it's looking at levels, and if family equals a certain test value, it will return a color override, which is pretty cool. So this could definitely be my favorite new feature. In Revit, a schedule is used to display a customized list of elements and their parameters that exist within your project. Schedules are powerful tools in that they are live, non-graphical views of a project. As such, they automatically update as elements are added, removed, or modified from the project. Schedules can be dragged and dropped onto sheets, much like any other view. So here's the big improvement. Revit 23 adds a new capability to schedules that enables them to detect and display only those project elements relevant to the schedule that exist in other views placed on the same sheet. So you can enable this behavior by selecting the new Filter by Sheet option available in the Filter tab of the schedule properties. So this filters the contents of the schedule to display those elements appearing on the same sheet. The schedule is still live. This is the best part. If you crop the view on the sheet, the contents of the schedule will instantly update. So if I move the crop region and now a couple doors or windows aren't shown, they'll immediately drop off the schedule. Pretty cool. Another quick one here, they just added in 4 new files available in schedules, 4 new parameters and tags for Rebar. This one's pretty neat. In previous releases, you could displace elements in 3D, but now you can do it in 2D, and you can also tag these elements. And just like before, you can create isometric 3D views in Revit and use the Displace Elements tool to offset the elements from the actual position. But now the tag feature has been enabled for these. So you can tag before or after displacement now. Moving right along with some tag enhancements here. So Revit 22 introduced the ability to associate a tag with more than one object and create multiple leaders from a single tag. Now in Revit 23, you can select multiple elements and generate a single tag for all of them. With dedicated commands in the ribbon, you can control the visibility of individual tag leaders by hiding one or several of them. And this is possible either during tag placement or when selecting existing multi-leader tag. You can snap and adjust tag leaders individually or simultaneously. So these enhancements for multi-leader tags make it even easier to annotate your designs quickly and accurately in Revit. In Revit 23, the tag feature has been extended to support even more categories. This includes individual elements such as architectural columns, entourage, fascias, gutters, roof soffits, handrails, top rails, pads, ramps, and wall sweeps. It also includes model groups and Revit links, for example, to show their own name, which is pretty neat. Shop drawings are used by structural detailers to clearly communicate their design intent and fabrication instructions to fabricators and contractors. Revit 23 offers you the ability to displace rebar elements. This means that you can offset bars slightly from their actual position in concrete shop drawing views to help collaborators see these elements more clearly. Just a nice little upgrade there. All right, so this was kind of a big change too in 23. So Revit 23 makes it easier for you to view reinforcement and 3D views as solids. Simply set the 3D view's detail level to fine, and rebars will be displayed with a solid representation. So this is a big fundamental change if you've done a lot of work with rebar. The view is solid property in the view visibility states has been removed. In the dialog, you can now toggle the unobscured property for multiple selected rows using the spacebar. The toggle visibility option is now available for all reinforcement elements. That includes area path, rebar, fabric sheet, and rebar couplers in the right-click menu. And yeah, I think this is nice because you don't have to individually control them now. They're all kind of out there as solid geometry. It's pretty nice. This is a big one for our MEP engineers who work on a lot of renovations. So with Revit 23, it improves the handling of demolished MEP elements and their systems. Elements now maintain their system connection and information on the demolish phase. In previous releases of Revit, MEP objects did not stay connected on the demolish phase, and system information such as system name, abbreviation, and classification parameters was discarded. So various workarounds were needed to properly control the visibility of demolished MEP elements. Now in Revit 23, the MEP elements will stay connected when assigned to the demo phase. These demolished objects will maintain their system name, abbreviation, and classification parameters. Your components will stay connected, allowing you to move adjoining items. Yeah, so real quick, we're right at kind of the top of the hour here. I just probably have another 5 or 6 more slides, so I don't think we're going to go more than 7 or 8 more minutes. So hopefully everybody can stick around. If you have to drop off, thanks for joining me. So moving right along here in Revit 23, Electrical equipment circuit numbers are shown in the properties palette. The circuit number parameter is available for panel schedules and for electrical equipment tags. Revit 23 includes a highly voted feature request from the Revit ideas related to contour labels. Releases, these labels would display upside down in certain orientations. Now, contour labels always display with the proper text orientation. All right, so Revit 23 improves the behavior of generic annotation families to maintain a consistent orientation with their host elements. In previous versions of Revit, generic annotations on ceiling plans would point in the opposite direction from the same element on plan views. In Revit 23, generic annotations on ceiling plans will match the plan view. Similarly, generic annotations would previously change orientation when their host walls or vertical surfaces were rotated, but now rotating the host element will not affect these annotations. Finally, when elements were mirrored on a wall or vertical surface, the annotation orientations would not change. In 23, generic annotations will mirror to match their host elements. All right, and this could possibly be the very best of the best as far as new features. Revit 23 offers the ability to choose which order you would like the page order to be for PDF export and print output. You can customize your page orders by predefined browser organization, ascending sheet numbers, or this is the key here, your own manual order, which is awesome. Manual order allows you to drag and drop sheets into whichever order you choose. And the best part is you can save the set you created for expedited printing, and it will be available for the next time you need to run a set. Very cool to finally have this. I don't know how many workarounds and extra sorting parameters I've had to add over the years, but that's all kind of gone now with this ability. Pretty awesome. Interesting feature here, the filled region tool allows you to define filled areas in detail views or add filled regions to annotation families. In previous releases of Revit, the fill patterns for filled regions were driven by a family type parameter. This required you to create separate family types for each fill pattern for the same family. In Revit 23, it enables the use of instance parameters for fill patterns. This means you can now individually control the fill pattern for each instance of a family that uses a filled region in your project. So you'll have to go into the family editor to dig into this and assign the parameter. And to clarify, this is not for standalone filled regions. It's really just for family elements that have a filled region built in. It really just helps you avoid creating a new family type when all you wanted to do is swap the fill for one of the items. Just nice to have this new flexibility here. Here's another pretty big one. In previous releases of Revit, replacing a view on a sheet required you to first delete the existing placed view and then drag and drop a new view onto the sheet. Revit 23 makes it easier to swap views on a sheet. To swap a view currently placed on a sheet with a compatible view, you can select the existing view and navigate to the positioning and view contextual panel on the ribbon. The viewport positioning parameter is saved for each viewport and determines how the view is positioned when swapped. You can select the viewport center to use the center of the viewport as a reference or view origin to use the origin of the view itself. View list is searchable and filters the list of all compatible views. Views already placed on a sheet are appended with their detail and sheet numbers for clarity. And if you attempt to replace a view with another view already placed on the same sheet, Revit will alert you with a pop-up dialog displaying the view's current detail and sheet number. Pretty cool. In Revit 23, you can use view filters to control the appearance of wall sweeps and wall constraints in the view. When modeling walls in Revit, the sweep tool is used to add decorative horizontal or vertical projections. So we can now control their appearance with view filters. We can now do a view filter rule for base constraint, base offset, and top constraint, which allowed us to put this green override on any walls that we're using as level 2 as a base constraint. So I could definitely see how that could be very useful to kind of audit your model visually. And so the project browser helps you navigate the views, schedules, sheets, groups, and families in your current project. So Revit 23 introduces a new feature that makes it easier for you to see which views have been placed on sheets. And if you've already used Revit 23, I'm sure you noticed this right away. In fact, I think it's the very first thing I noticed. If you expand the project browser, you will see a square icon to the left of each view name. A solid filled icon indicates that the view is currently placed on a sheet. An empty icon means that the view is not currently placed on a sheet. And a half filled means a schedule has been split, and some but not all segments of that schedule are currently on a sheet. The icon is displayed for all items listed in the project browser, including views, legend schedules, graphical column schedules, and panel schedules. But you can deactivate this behavior. If you just don't like it for whatever reason, you can just right click in the project browser and select show view placement on sheet status icons, and it just goes away. But personally, I have found it to be very helpful, so I recommend keeping it on. All right, let me see here. So, of course, yeah, if that wasn't enough, we have some additional documentation and enhancements. Parameters are now filtered by the all category by default when editing labels. Got some added parameters for model groups and Revit links. Yeah, I think pretty much that. I know we really went through a lot of material today, and I appreciate it for those of you who stayed on with us to get to the finish line here. So thank you very much for your time and attention. And with that, if you didn't get a chance to type in your question yet, I'll give you a little bit of time to type that in. And if you didn't have a chance to answer that, it added to our report, and we'll definitely follow up. So please ask away. If you had a question, go right ahead.